Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before I turn to my amendment, I want to welcome in particular new Clause 7 on non-crime hate incidents and new Clause 150 to ban sexual relationships between first cousins, proposed by my right honourable friend, the member for Basildon and Billericay. This bill also presents an opportunity for the government to support my amendment, new Clause 108, to protect freedom of expression. This is urgently needed because existing legislation has been manipulated to create a blasphemy law for the protection of Islam from criticism and protest. As I said in my speech last week, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not a Muslim, and I reject any attempt to tell me I cannot say what I think about any religion. No ideas or beliefs should be above criticism or scrutiny. The transformation of the Public Order Act 1986, which has become Britain's de facto blasphemy law, needs to be reversed. Sections 4 and 5 of the Act are now used to prosecute individuals for expressing legitimate opinions. The law has been twisted, making the protester responsible for the potentially violent reaction of those who cannot deal with criticism of their beliefs. The introduction of offences for religious hatred back in 2006 raised enough concerns about free speech from parliamentarians across the spectrum to lead to what is now Section 29J of the Public Order Act. The legislation protecting freedom of expression states clearly, nothing in this part shall be read or given effect in a way which prohibits or restricts discussion, criticism or expressions of antipathy, dislike, ridicule, insult or abuse of particular religions or the beliefs or practices of their adherents. This was very welcome, but it only applies to Part 3 of the Act. That's why my amendment would extend Section 29J to the whole of the Public Order Act and to Section 1 of the Malicious Communications Act 1988 and Section 127 of the Communications Act 2003. People from across the country have written to me expressing their support for my amendment as I introduced it in a similar form in a 10-minute rule bill last week, and I want to thank in particular Fayaz Mughal from Tell Mama for his support. Some have expressed concern for my safety in making this case, and in so doing, Madam Deputy Speaker, they reinforce just how grave the crisis of our freedom of expression has become. It's been encouraging to receive cross-party support for my amendment, but I'm disappointed, although not terribly surprised, that not one member from the Liberal Democrats has supported it or voiced their opposition to the revival in this debate or recently of blasphemy laws. It's not very liberal, it's not very democratic, and not very appropriate for the party of Gladstone. This government and political leaders in general must be much braver and more honest about how we deal with the threat to free speech from the threat of violence. But we're seeing the opposite. Ministers, when I've asked questions about this, have stuck to their lines to take, insisting we don't have a blasphemy law in this country, when everyone knows, in effect, actually we do. And worse, the government now plans to impose a definition of Islamophobia upon us that would stop criticism of Islam and Islamic practices, clamp down even more firmly on free speech, and empower extremists while letting down the pluralists and moderates in the British Muslim population. I certainly will, yes.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. He's making a really impassioned speech, and in some ways I do agree with elements of what he's saying. I was involved in an extensive discussion with the humanists recently about exactly this issue, where a gentleman was prosecuted for burning a Quran and he himself just wanted to express his displeasure to the Turkish government. But does he not think it would be preferable to ensure that the law is being adhered to correctly by those who administer it in the courts, rather than trying to bring in an additional law that could damage religious relations in some way?
Nick Timothy.
Well, I thank her for her contribution. I mean, I think the point is that the courts are interpreting the law as they see it, and it's the job of us in this place, if we believe that to be wrong, to correct it through legislation. And I think the appropriate way to do that would be to extend 29J in the way that I describe. To be clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't know if the Minister is allowed to intervene, but she's welcome to. So, well, she's been here longer than... Okay.
The honourable gentleman, we did discuss whether I was allowed to or not. I'm fairly certain in cases that I have taken of harassment and malicious communications, that cases of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred have formed part of that in cases that I have been involved with. Is he suggesting that we should criticising Jewish people should be allowed?
Nick Timothy.
No, I think she misunderstands my point, and actually I was about to get on to a related issue, which is that hating and discriminating against people on the basis that they are Muslims or indeed different religious groups is already a crime. And if one was harassing Jewish people in the way that the minister just described, then that would be a criminal offence, even in the circumstances that my amendment passed. But Islamophobia, as I was saying, is a made-up and nonsensical concept that aligns protection of individuals from hatred with the protection of ideas and beliefs, and is therefore, in my view, completely unacceptable in principle. I will, yes.
Thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way. Can I ask him what he would like me to tell the family of Muhammad Salim, the 8-year-old grandfather who was stabbed simply for being a Muslim?
That was obviously an appalling crime, and I remember it very well, but I don't think that has anything to do with what I'm saying right now in this debate. And look, in a free society, in a pluralistic society, we have to be free to criticise ideas. There are laws to protect people, but we cannot have laws that protect ideas from scrutiny or criticism. But the government is pressing on with its work on Islamophobia, and only this week, on the very day Baroness Casey said the rape gangs were often not prosecuted because of the ethnicity of the perpetrators, ministers launched a consultation on the new Islamophobia definition. That consultation is open only to carefully selected, invited organisations, lasts only 4 weeks, and allows contributors to remain anonymous. In other words, Madam Deputy Speaker, as lots of people have put it to me, it is rigged, and that is completely unacceptable. Parliament repealed blasphemy laws years ago, and trials for blasphemy anyway had stopped many decades back. But they are with us once more, and Parliament must act to restore our freedom of expression.